Good to see all the faces. My name is Sarah Davis. I am the City of Lubbock's representative and project manager for what we're calling the Canyon Lakes FIF study. I am going to give a bit of a background on this, and then we'll talk about more of what this study entails. I will then hand it over to Friese and Nichols for more detail on the technical side. So, the City of Lubbock has been awarded a grant under the newly created Texas Flood Infrastructure Fund, or FIF, to develop a watershed study for the Canyon Lakes system. The FIF is managed by the Texas Water Development Board, and it was created to assist in financing drainage, flood mitigation, and flood control projects. Friese and Nichols was hired by the City of Lubbock to create models that would help us define flood hazards, risks for private property and public infrastructure. The models will also provide a platform for developing and evaluating improvement alternatives. In our first public meeting, we achieved public input for the study areas. This is our second meeting in which we will discuss the technical data and the potential projects within the study limits. There will be a third and final meeting in the future, which will discuss the final report and review final selected projects. As previously stated, this is the study. This study is being done by Friese and Nichols, and they know a lot more than I do, so I will let them take it from here. If we have any Q&A, wait till after the presentation. So without further ado, David Rivera.
All right, thank you, Sarah, and welcome everybody to this public meeting for our Canyon Lake study. Today with us, we have Heather Kister. She's our senior advisor for the project. She's been involved from the very beginning. And then we have Miguel Ramirez. He's our engineer for the project, and he's the one with the details regarding the models and all the technical work that has been done in this study. My name is David Rivera. I'm the project manager, and I'll be here facilitating the presentation. I'll be talking through a few of the slides and kind of commenting and helping Miguel kind of explain what we have done so far. We're open for questions, guys. Anything you see on the screen that you want us to expound on or just go a little bit into more details, we'll be happy to cover those for you. But before we jump into the actual project, I think it's very important for everybody to understand what is the FIF or the FIF and how that relates to the larger effort that is going on at the state level, which is the regional flood planning process. The state has been divided into 15 regions, and our firm has been involved in 12 of those 15 regions, either as a prime firm or as a sub, helping the creation of these new regional flood plans for the 15 watersheds across the state. Our team has also been involved with the FIF from the very beginning when it was for the first time, even before the plans, and that's how this particular study got funded. And we help our clients and in going through the application process. This is a funding opportunity that the Water Development Board has provided. And we were part of 31 applications, which this is one of those that got funded through the FIF. We help our clients receive around $56 million in funding for these studies. And just keep in mind that this is something that is a connection, right? We're not doing a study in a vacuum. There's a funding strategy behind it. So the elements or the concept that we create out of this study for potential flood mitigation, the idea is to incorporate them into the next funding cycle as part of the regional flood plans that we're going to start possibly August or September timeframe. The second cycle will begin. So we're hoping that the projects that we conceptualize and create here for flood mitigation can be included in that state flood plan and be eligible for funding in the next cycle. So that's the connection. All right, so let's start identifying our study area. We're in the Upper Brazos watershed, upstream of the city of Lubbock. We call it HUC 10s, or simply the watersheds, right? The area that collects water into a given location. And we have large-scale watersheds that are included in this study. And we'll see some images of those and how large they are. But just the two of them are Shallow Water Yellow House Draw and Buffalo Springs Lake. Those are the two main ones, and you can see them on the next screen, really. These are two very large areas that we're considering as our study area. And understand that when we perform this study, we're going to show two different levels of detail. We're going to start first with a high-level analysis that is mainly intended to find areas of potential flood risk at a very high scale. Then we're going to move on into a much more detailed area where we drove in and dived in even more closer to provide an increased level of detail and define even better what are those potential flood risks. And we use different tools to do that, like different modeling softwares. This is all done in the computer world and modeling, numeric modeling. So we'll explain all of that here in this presentation. Another image here just to show if you can see the black and blue line where it says detailed stream limits. That's the area where we have detailed hydraulic analysis, and that means that we're going to be able to determine how high water gets through those streams and how much of that water could actually fall outside of the banks of the river and how that is going to impact existing roads and properties. Right, so we're not doing this level of detail for everything that we're showing here today. It's about 21 miles of stream that are included in that detailed assessment. We are going to be focusing on two specific tasks that we did as part of this study. Number 4 is what is called a screening assessment. And this is that high-level analysis that I was mentioning before, where you can imagine this as just dumping rain directly on the terrain on these very large-scale watersheds. And the models essentially tell us how much of that water infiltrates into the ground, how much of that water actually runs off and gets into the streams. In our area, we have the playa system, so we know that's a big storage component, and not every drop of water actually makes it into the stream. So you'll see that in the modeling results that we're going to show you here. At the bottom, you see this graphic, very simply saying we have 3 different modeling software packages. Each of those have a different purpose. We're going to start with ICPR4. That's the one that we use for the high-level analysis. Then HMS and RAS are the ones that are used for the more detailed assessment under task number 5. So we'll start with 4, and at this point, I'm going to pass it to Miguel, and he's going to give us a review of what he did and the model results and how we can use this for the future. So,
Hi, everyone. I'm glad you're here. So this was basically the starting point of our high-level study. It's about 5,000 square miles, and it extends from New Mexico all the way down to Lubbock. Highlighted in red are the watersheds that are in our project area. What you see in this graphic is our probable maximum precipitation event, or PMP event, and it's water accumulation for this area. We primarily utilize the PMP for safety and dam design, and this is not what we ideally designed to, but after running this event, we were able to remove about half of the area to boost efficiency in our model running. So it no longer takes a whole day to run, it takes about half a day. On the screen here, this is the 100-year event, which is what we're most common for us to run. You can still see significant puddling in playa areas and along the stream, but it's a big difference in the water accumulation. And this is the final output for task 4, and it's just to show where structures are potentially inundated at a high level. And David will introduce task 5.
Thank you, Miguel. You'll see some graphics here that are similar in terms of the area that the ICPR model covers. I just want to point out again what you saw in the previous slide here. I'm going to go back real quick. This is the final result of those simulations. So everywhere where you see those blue areas, that's where the water level, that's the highest water level that was reached during this 100-year storm event. And this is essentially a planning tool, what we're showing here. This can be, you can zoom in into your area, different cities, different locations, and you can zoom in and see, what is the expected level of accumulation in this storm event. So not very detailed, but we cover a lot of area, right, with this model. And this can be used for many different purposes in the future. Now, moving into the more detailed modeling exercise, what you're seeing here is a schematic of the same area, but with a different software. This software is HMS, and the purpose of this model is essentially to simulate rainfall, simulate infiltration, and then also simulate how that water is flowing and connecting through the system. So the timing is a big factor in the HMS model. This by itself doesn't give you a complete picture. This is only going to feed what we have as a hydraulic model. That's the RAS model that we'll see in the next few slides. But we wanted to show you this because this is essentially the basis for the amount of flow that we want to analyze and see what are the impacts based on different storm events. So you see the level of detail, on the far west side, these are much larger basins. And then as we get closer and closer to the city limits, we see a lot more detail that you can't even tell, because there's so much going on there. But that just gives you an indication of where you place more of your effort, right, when you want to see more detail in the analysis. So what do we get out of the HMS model? What do we get out of a rainfall simulation? What you're seeing here on the right side on the top is essentially those blue bars or that blue graphic represents the total amount of rainfall that is falling on the ground on a given particular storm. Again, not all the rain gets into the streams or into the streets, right? Some of that will be infiltrated. In our case here, in our watersheds here, a lot of that gets in the playa system and is stored, and it doesn't really connect. It just stays up there and eventually evaporates. So the model applies that rainfall. Some of it goes into infiltration. Some of it gets allocated to storage. Whatever remains, that's what goes into the system. That's the runoff, and that's the flow graphic that you see on the bottom, right? It takes a certain amount of time to see that reaction of the stream. Once it rains, it doesn't show immediately on the stream. It takes a few hours, and then you see how that peak discharge, that's the most important part of that graphic. How high can that get? And in this case, you can see that once it hits that peak, it takes about, half a day or more to actually go down all the way to normal levels again. So these models are combining, right? This is just one of all those basins that are in the model. This is just one of them. The model puts them all together and computes how they all interact, how they all maybe overlap and creates more and more higher and higher peak discharges. So that's the beauty of HMS. It takes into account the timing, and that's really important. In this example, we wanted to show that this system is really two separate watersheds that come together near the city. So Yellow House Draw and Blackwater Draw, they're flowing from two different watersheds, and at the confluence where they join, they don't join at the same time, right? Water or runoff that's coming from Yellow House is going to reach that confluence a lot faster. So in the first 2 days of the simulation, you already see a peak discharge flowing through. And then later, 2 days later, is when you see the peak discharge from Blackwater Draw. So fortunately, these two guys don't, interact directly one on top of the other. But do know that in our simulations, you see those two peaks. And if we have a road, for example, that overtops, you're going to see that the first time you see that is on the first couple of days, it recedes and then it comes back again, right? So you have that effect, and that's one of the most interesting things we're seeing here. And the second peak, you can see it goes up to 800 CFS versus on the right side, you have almost 4,000. So your biggest peak is coming first, right? So keep that in mind. All right, so all of that was just step one. It's calculating how much water is coming in and when it's coming in. All that information is connected to our next software package, which is RAS. In this package, what we're trying to do is run those hydrology inputs, determine how high water is getting at different locations, and with that, we can identify road crossings that are over top, properties that are potentially at risk along those 21 miles of stream, right? So what we're going to do next is just show you the level of detail that we added to those models and a series of examples that kind of show you what are the typical situations that we observed when we were doing our analysis. So if Mia, you can come up and kind of show them our next set of slides.
So what you see here is basically our overall RAS model. And it has 449 cross sections, and it's simulated for 21 miles. We have 36 structures, which include dams, culverts, bridges, and it's a 1D, 2D structure. So in that red boundary up at the top of the page, that's our 2D grid boundary. This graphic here shows the 100-year flood plan, and ideally what we want to show y'all in this graphic is even at the 2-year event, we have roadways overtopping, we have potential buildings at risk. So in our 2-year event, that's one of our most common events that we get. We have 6 roadways that overtop. We have 30 potential buildings at risk. In our 100-year event, we have 12 roadways that overtop and 74 buildings at risk. In this graphic, we have a zoomed-in view near University Avenue. We have a commercial building at the top, which is potentially at risk. We have a historical building that's at potential risk and a recreational structure at risk. This video here just shows how our model handles, how our model flows through this area at some of the potential structures that are at risk. And here is a road, it's East 50th Street, and at the bottom right corner, you can see the depth legend there. So the darker the blue, the higher the water elevation. And you can just see in this video that the roadway just gets completely overtopped. In this graphic here, we wanted to show one of the tools in RAS, particle tracing. I stopped this animation right at the peak of the first, from Yellow House Draw, so you can see how long the flow vectors are. And right at the roadway, you can see how some of those flow vectors bend, showing that it's got to bend over that road to inundate it. So in this video as well, I captured it at different times so you can see the length of the flow vector shrinking and slowing down. This is another area of interest for us. It's the confluence where Yellow House and Blackwater Draw come in. This area is of interest to us because this is where our special modeling technique came in of putting a 1D and 2D area together. So our 2D area is more of where we don't have these cross-sections in green, and our 1D area is just the limits of those cross-sections. This is one of the good examples that we found to show how a roadway and structure are being impacted. So we highlighted the roadway and a structure just so we can get your attention there. The roadway is Erskine Street, and we just wanted to show you the side-by-side so you can see how deep the roadway actually gets. And so right about now, you can see that the roadway is inundated about 4 feet higher than the actual road. Before I hand this off to David, are there any questions or anything else y'all would like me to go back and see?
Can you go back to the Joyland slide, 3 slides back?
Yes, sir.
What animations do we have? I know this is the 100-year. Were there other events that were animated? What events were analyzed?
We analyzed the 2 through the 500 year.
So 2, 10, 25,
I believe so.
Okay, I was curious. This one was a very cool animation. Did we cut out the park entrance on the very center, in the center, where Joyland actually has the Cesar Chavez goes under Marcia Sharp? Do we have that cut out to know if actually it short circuits and goes under because of that underpass?
So we have it linked with the lateral structure to the downstream cross sections to that Cesar Chavez Drive. So we can look at that structure to see.
Just to see if it overtops it.
Right.
Okay, awesome. That's what I was curious about from that animation.
Perfect. Any other questions? Okay, David.
Okay, so our study is much more than what we have shown today, right? There's a lot more that is ahead of us. But really what we wanted to make sure today is that you understand that we have these tools and that now it's a matter of, how do we use those tools to find the places where we want to focus on next? And as part of the study, we will concentrate on between 6 and 5 locations that we're going to go in and basically heighten or increase the level of detail even more so that we can analyze potential solutions at those locations to mitigate the flooding that you have been seeing today in those examples. So, of course, we cannot do that for every single location. So the city has looked at these outputs and these maps and studied them and looked through them, and they have indicated to us as their consultants, okay, these are the areas where we think is the most critical and we want you to focus on finding potential solutions. So that's the next step. We haven't started that. All we have at this point is that list of sites, and we need to look into them now and start generating these potential concepts and ideas, and the models are the tools, right? We're going to use them to see if we were to do certain action here, how is that benefit in that location, but also how it could impact something else downstream. So that's the beauty of having the models and all this interconnected and be able to analyze those areas in that way. So we're going to create conceptual alternatives. One important item, again, I want to be very clear about this. We're going to be following Texas Water Development Board guidelines on how to develop projects so that they can then be listed in the regional flood plans. There's a full list of requirements that we need to comply with for them to be included and be eligible for funding. So that's very important that we understand what are those requirements and that we meet them. One of the biggest items is to show that there are no negative impacts downstream or to adjacent properties. So as Miguel and I work on this, we need to look at this as a complete model. It won't be just an isolated area. We need to see what happens downstream every time we try something new in the model. So that's very important. Number two, we're going to be preparing benefit cost analysis for each of these locations. They don't need to necessarily be greater than 1, like FEMA typically asks for. We could have lower than 1, but we need to explain what's going on. But that's a requirement. We need to calculate that benefit cost ratio. And once we do that and we have all the information that we need, that's going to be submitted to the regional flood planning group here in the near future for them to consider them for inclusion in their plan. So that's the next step in terms of locations where we're going to be working on for flood mitigation. But there's more. There's more in this study, and that's the part associated with dam safety. Right now, we have a different team that is focused on assessing all these 8 structures in a study area. Our team is also going to, once they do that assessment, they're also going to do their own hydrologic and hydraulic analysis. Very different from what you're seeing here today. It's more focused on dam safety and what could happen if one of those dams were to breach, right? So that's a different analysis, but it's going to be used in the models that we created as a starting point, right? So you can imagine that that's more of an extreme condition. If there's a breach and a dam actually fails, these models are going to show us how that floodplain is going to look like and how many properties could potentially be at risk. So that's an ongoing process. We'll see these results also in the last public meeting. They're also going to be working with alternative analysis in this case, because if they don't pass these different checks for safety, then that's an action item as well. We need to work for that situation as well. So those are the 2 items that are missing in terms of analysis that are very important for this study. Once we do that, then we'll submit a draft technical report to the city, to the Water Development Board. There are some periods of comments that we'll need to abide to. And while that's happening, we're going to be working on public meeting number 3, which could happen end of the year, beginning of next year, give or take, is our best estimate for that. And then the final thing will be the technical report at the end of May of next year is what we're expecting. So this is, again, it's kind of a midway type of progress report on the study. You're seeing the tools, you're seeing what the tools can do and how we're planning on using them. And that's really the main purpose of this meeting today. And if there are other questions, we'll be happy to address them now.
Where's that photo?
Sir? He took this photo, I think.
One of our interns in the office had taken this photo, and it is the Blue Sky Lake or Lake 54.
Not too long ago, right?
No, this is recent.
This is a recent photo.
No more.
Hey.
We're going to mitigate. How much of that is going
It's going to be better, hey? All right. Well, that's all we've got. If you guys are good, then we're all set. Okay, well, thank you for your attention, and we'll stick around if there are other questions.
Further downstream, actually. Oh.
Okay.